Hello, Wellspring. So we are on our May 8th reading, and we are moving out of the book of Nehemiah and moving into the book of Esther. Where's it? Ezra. Oh my goodness, I'm forgetting what we just did yesterday. Nehemiah, yes. We're moving out of the book of Nehemiah and moving into the book of Esther. The book of Esther has some really unique features to it. For the first thing is that we're not going to hear God or Yahweh mentioned really at all in this story. Yet God is the hero of the story of Esther. God is the hero that is going to deliver the Jews and stand up for his people. But we're going to see it through everyday common occurrences throughout the life of Esther, her uncle Mordecai, and we're going to see God's hand at work, his providence being played out, and his deliverance for the people of Israel that are still in the Persian capital. So part of what we're going to see here is that this is a group of Israelites that stayed or were still in the Persian Empire. So about 100 years after the Babylonian exile is about where this is set. And this is a group of Jews that we're going to interact with and see their story unfold and God's protection of them and God's hand over them and the use of Mordecai and Esther and their integrity and obedience through everyday commonplace decisions, through regular acts of obedience, and then moments where they step into in tremendous bravery, tremendous courage, and how God uses them and positions them to be his hands and feet to have his work and his mission accomplished. And it's a beautiful story. It's a beautiful book for us to be in over the next 9 days. Um, to just recognize that God is involved in the daily, everyday, mundane. God is involved in our daily decisions. God is seeing his path and his plan and his long game played out through our common everyday acts of obedience, through our common everyday moments of integrity and living out a life that he's calling us to. Whether we always recognize his miraculous hand being involved or not isn't the issue. God is at work in all of our lives. And sometimes we recognize it very clearly and we can say, okay, God gave us the pillar of fire by night and the pillar of cloud by day to lead us, like the Israelites in the in the desert in the 40 years of the wandering. And sometimes we don't always know where God's involvement is. But when we look back at our lives and we look back at the journeys we've been on, we see what God has been doing. So with that kind of overview in mind, let's dig into the book of Esther and find out what the word has to teach us and to show us about God's involvement in the daily, everyday life of his people. We are in Esther chapter 1, and I'll be reading from the NIV. So let's dig into it. This is what happened during the time of Xerxes, the Xerxes who ruled over 127 provinces stretching from India to Kush. At that time, King Xerxes reigned from his royal throne in the citadel of Susa. In the 3rd year of his reign, he gave a banquet for all of his nobles and officials, the military leaders of Persia and Media, the princes, and the nobles of the provinces were present. For a full 180 days, he displayed the vast wealth of his kingdom and the splendor and glory of his majesty. When these days were over, the king gave a banquet lasting 7 days in the enclosed garden of the king's palace for yeah, for all the people from the least to the greatest who were in the citadel of Susa. The garden had hangings of white and blue linen, fastened with cords of white linen and purple material to silver rings on marble pillars. There were couches of gold and silver on a mosaic pavement of porphyra, marble, mother of pearl, and other costly stones. Wine was served in goblets of gold, each one different from the other, and the royal wine was abundant, in keeping with the king's liberality. By the king's command, each guest was allowed to drink with no restrictions. For the king instructed all the wine stewards to serve each man what he wished. Queen Vashti also gave a banquet for the women in the royal palace of King Xerxes. On the 7th day, when King Xerxes was in high spirits from wine, he commanded the 7 eunuchs who served him, Mehuman, Biztha, Harbona, Bigtha, Abagtha, Zethar, and Carcass, to bring before him Queen Vashti, wearing her royal crown, in order to display her beauty to the people and nobles. for she was lovely to look at. But when the attendants delivered the king's command, Queen Vashti refused to come. Then the king became furious and burned with anger. Since it was customary for the king to consult experts in the matters of the law and justice, he spoke with the wise men who understood the times and were closest to the king: Kashina, Shethar, Admatha, Tarshish, Merez, Marcina, and Memucan, the 7 nobles of Persia and Media who had special access to the king and were highest in the kingdom. According to the law, what must be done to Queen Vashti? He asked. She has not obeyed the command of King Xerxes that the eunuchs have taken to her. Then Memucan replied in the presence of the king and the nobles, Queen Vashti has done wrong, not only against the king, but also against all the nobles and the peoples of all the provinces of King Xerxes. For the queen's conduct will become known to all the women, and so they will despise their husbands and say, King Xerxes commanded Queen Vashti to be brought before him, but she would not come. This very day, the Persian and Median women of the nobility who have heard about the queen's conduct will respond to all the king's nobles in the same way. There will be no end of disrespect and discord. Therefore, if it pleases the king, let him issue a royal decree, and let it be written in the laws of Persia and Media, which cannot be repealed, that Vashti is never again to enter the presence of King Xerxes. Also let the king give her royal position to someone else who is better than she. Then, when the king's edict is proclaimed throughout all his vast realm, all the women will respect their husbands from the least to the greatest. The king and his nobles were pleased with this advice, so the king did as Memucan proposed. He sent dispatches to all parts of the kingdom, to each province in its own script, and to each people in their own language, proclaiming that every man should be the ruler over his own household, using his own native tongue. Yeah, interesting start to our story, right? We have this king who throws a 180-day party, demonstrating his wealth. He's basically showing off, and throws a 7-day party where he's getting drunk. And while he's in a drunken state or a high spirits state from the wine, he calls for his wife to be brought in and for her beauty to be put on display. She refuses, and so he gathers his nobles and says, "What should I do about this?" And they basically say, uh, all the women of our province or of our provinces and of our kingdom are going to begin disrespecting their husbands if you don't put an end to this. So you need to put her out. Don't ever let her be seen by you again for her disobedience. Take away her royal position and basically, kick her out of her position, kick her out of your good graces, kick her out of your sight. This way, all people, all the men will know, and all the women will know that men are the rulers of their households. And so we have this drunken, foolish king who's, just doing whatever comes his way. He's flaunting his wealth, and he decides, okay, that's a great idea. Sends out the edict to all of Persia, to all the provinces, and basically says, the women have to be quiet. They have no authority. They have no respectability in one sense. They are just the property of their husbands. And sends this edict out to all of Persia, and that's where we are leaving our story for today. So we'll look forward to diving further into this journey and seeing how God is at work, even in the folly of this king, even in the folly of this kind of melodrama that's happening here, that we kind of see the inner workings of this weird royal relationship and whatever this kind of like, almost, it's like bad sitcom TV, right? It's bad writing, but this is what's happening, right? So men are telling their women, you better listen up. And we're going to see how God's at work even in that space. And it also sets the stage for us to see some of the bravery that's going to come later. So God bless you, Wellspring. Have a great day. This is an awesome place to jump in. So encourage your friends, encourage your family to jump in with us as we're doing this reading. Esther's a great story. It's a lot of fun. My daughter Hadessa is named after Esther. So check it out. God bless you guys. Love you all. See you tomorrow.